Cute.
All right, here we go. Where's my lovely little fox? See it? What? I got a
This
unicorn.
one's
Got a unicorn.
I just have the sticker on a
Here,
stick.
there we go. All right. Hey, everybody. It's me, Jennifer, Little Metal Foxes. And I'm here with my friends.
Julia. Julia from Little Metal Foxes.
And
Helen from Little Meadow Foxes Down Under.
hey, everybody. So, listen, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the price of silver has gone up. Currently, a ounce of 20 gauge sterling wire is going to be about 120 bucks. So for those of you that are making, earrings, jump rings, things like that, your wire just went through the roof. So there's a couple of advantages and disadvantages to that. And I know a lot of metalsmiths are kind of in a panic mode. Some, hanging their head because they recycled too soon. Some, guilty that they didn't buy more back in October when the price was already at 50.
Yeah, I sent like 60 ounces to the refiner in October.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, back in October, that was like,
Which was like
oh,
a decade worth of scrap, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're never going to see this high again. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to drop back down. And then the rest of us regretting that we didn't buy more back in October because it's going to keep going up. And market predictions are looking at it going over 200. This has mostly to do with the tech industry, and it's going to affect not only metalsmiths and jewelers, but the photography industry and anything that's using like silver nitrate, like photography, as well as the medical industry and everybody else. So there's a lot of waves that are being sent out because of this, and it's going to be interesting. So for those of you that bought sterling and have plenty on hand that you're still using, yay, because you bought it low and you're going to make a profit on that silver, but you've got to mark it up enough to make sure that you're not going to lose money in replacing that metal, right? So
exactly.
Now's the time to kind of now's the time to kind of like stop everything, reprice and reprice it because it's going to keep going up. Don't reprice it for what it is right this second, because it's going to continue to go up. And you want to be able to continue doing what you do. And it's hard not to think in your own pockets about that. It's hard not to think, oh my God, these earrings are going to be 4 times what they were, worth before. The same thing has happened to the gold industry because gold is now almost at $5,000, or right, hovering right about there.
Yeah.
And not that long ago, it was at, 400 an ounce. So there's definitely an adjustment needs to be made. The jewelry industry has had to do that with gold off and on over the years, and it is a matter of kind of stopping, repricing, and moving on, right? But I'm going to tell you not to panic, and this is why. During the 80s, the price of silver and gold skyrocketed because somebody tried to corner the market on silver, and it went straight through the roof. And you had, and it was
because the roof back then was up to $50 an ounce for silver.
It was $50 an ounce for silver, and you had the jewelry industry was the main one affected at the time because these people were trying to corner the market and basically artificially inflate the price of silver. And so you had companies like Tiffany's go in and say, you've got to break up this monopoly on silver to the government. And they were like, oh, what's happening? Oh, no. So they broke that up and immediately the price came back down. However, that it didn't happen, like in a day or a week. There was a ripple and cascade effect that happened because the prices of metals suddenly, spiked. And the reaction to that from a lot of metalsmiths around the world and jewelers around the world was this in crazy boom of exploration of alternative materials. And so we have been very fortunate, I think, to be witness to that in my lifetime, to be able to see us go through like the turquoise phase, this insane phase of metal spiking and an exploration of other materials, to back to more traditional metalworking, and now we're going to end up having this alternative material thing again. I think that like 3D printing and the tech industry, in terms of being able to produce things on the computer and print them out of other materials or laser cut them out of other materials, is going to be, yeah, one of the solutions for a lot of people. So being able to work with that and cut things out, and basically you're only limited by your imagination and what kind of print quality you got. So, I mean, if you're going that way, that's one solution. Another solution is, working with plastics and acrylics and papers and reactive metals that are less expensive, and plating and
Polymer
electroforming.
clay and, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, clay, ceramics, plastics, and I was recalling a book, The New Jewelry, that Julia has there, that was printed in the mid '80s, and this was definitely one of the books that came out that sort of like was the pinnacle of all the new jewelry that was being explored. It includes plastics and glass and fiber.
I'm trying to find let's see if I can
Yeah,
find
bone,
something.
shell, reactive metals, aluminum, niobium, titanium, all the reactive metals that you can do stuff with. And there were less expensive options
That's the
that
cover
created,
material.
yeah, that created bold looks using things like fabric and looking back at very ornate jewelry. So things, feathers and natural materials and found objects, and recycling materials like tin boxes and printed material and
This
all
is
kinds of.
this is tin. This is Esther Noble. It's the painted tin.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says. Um,
yeah,
yeah. So I think she cut out. Yeah, she's the Israeli
oh,
artist. And then you were talking about Harriet Estelle Berman,
mhm.
who also did, I mean, these pieces, let's see, these are neoprene, let's see.
Yeah, she's using like recycled tin.
These are neoprene over steel and wood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, crazy. And, so there's a lot of those pieces, and a lot of that stuff was being influenced by Northern European jewelers as well, because they were already kind of experimenting with a lot of alternative materials. So I think we're going to see a huge push for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got, Arlene Fish and a bunch of California artists that were working in things that were fiber, and working with threads of all
Right,
kinds
or
of
like the
different.
copper, the resin coated copper wire that Arlene famously used. Trying to
Right.
see if there was a piece. I
Yeah,
thought there was
looking at
some
things like
other.
materials like silk, and I mean it's just and bone and horn and all those materials, and looking back at a lot of more
Plexiglass and acrylic and
indigenous
steel.
tribal stuff materials as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But Helen,
Tantalum
what?
shells and
Yeah, Helen, what in terms of the laser uh, that you've got there is, because I know we can laser cut and laser work pieces as well as
Yeah.
3D build pieces. So what have you got in terms of? I know you're adding some things to your studio for that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start well, just for my own practice too, so I can incorporate my drawing into my metal in a different way, because I'm not necessarily gonna fully invest in like chasing and repoussé, but um oh God, where do I have it? At any rate, I'm gonna be testing some copper and brass today. I've already tested silver and stainless, and I uh Oh, my brain. Um,
But I mean, you can do
uh,
things like veneer,
yeah,
and
so yeah,
I
but what my
mean,
plan is like to take some of my drawings and then put it on and then add a little bit of, texturing with like stamps and whatever to take whatever, materials that I can laser. Now I had to change my laser head from a diode to a infrared. Um, but yeah, so I'm incorporating that into exploring uh that aspect of what are the alternate materials that I can use. But you can use like acrylic, you can use wood, you can do leather. There's a lot of things that you can laser
yeah,
in in the machine here.
yeah,
And then you can set it in your finer materials.
yeah, or make the whole thing out of that. I mean, there are people that
Yes.
are taking, you can make the whole, cut out the ring out of plexi, or whatever it is, or
Yes.
bracelets.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been seeing, bangles cut out of plastic since, the 70s,
Yeah.
pretty
You just
much.
have to
So,
be when you are if you're considering using a
longer, yeah,
laser cutter to do acrylic, be make a special point of choosing the right laser head. Diodes are limited. Infrared is limited in the colors of acrylic that you can do. It's usually opaque and not transparent. Or you have to, like, if it's a diode, then it's a blue laser. And so then you can only do like, the orange to yellow type, red type, or black
interesting.
I had no
colors.
idea. I had no idea that that was the
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I didn't either until because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make all this acrylic stuff. And no, no,
Mm,
I did not. Do not follow my examples. Study what you're going to, what you need and what you want to cut so that you get the appropriate laser. Now, that's not saying I regret buying this because this is really awesome, but I'm gonna have to, up my either buy another laser or, figure out if I
yeah,
can add a different head to cut all the acrylic that I wanted to cut.
yeah,
So just be
yeah,
aware that, when you're talking lasers, they different laser heads can do different materials. Pay
yeah.
attention.
It's not like one's better than the other.
No, no, no.
Yeah, it's just they're used for different things, and that's
Yeah.
important.
I'm actually
And
gonna
I mean,
find
there are people that are using like water jet to cut out certain things as well, and that's usually a bigger industrial, use.
yeah,
But
yeah.
still,
Put it up here.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
for some
just
of the
so you can
lasers
see an
cutting out,
example, that's stainless steel that I
yeah,
lasered with the diode. Now
right.
my infrared would do a different kind of uh it's a little funky. I'm not as happy about the diet the
You're going to have to spotlight that
it's
stainless
Uh,
okay. It doesn't it's not that big a deal. It's just
steel.
these did not turn out as great as I had
Hold up
expected, but
your little crow again.
yeah, but the silver one, I'd have to go and
Is
get
that,
it, and we're not going to go
is
do
that
that.
that's stainless steel?
This is stainless steel, and this was with the diode. The infrared that I have now on the silver was phenomenal. Go look at it on our Instagram. I have an image on there.
But stainless
Yeah.
steel is a lot less expensive than silver right now.
Yeah, it is. But
I think
this you can barely feel the etch on the
mhm.
stainless steel, but that's with the diode. With the silver, the infrared was a nice. Jennifer can attest to that
Yeah, it
because
was
I
amazing.
brought it. You could really feel the depth of the comparatively the depth
Yeah,
of the etch on the silver. So you can take little small scraps, really thin silver, laser it, set it, incorporate it so that you can use small, less expensive elements in your stuff.
yeah.
So there's
I mean, using if you're doing it, because I know some people will do that on ceramics or wood or paper or leather, and there's so many options, and glass, right?
yeah. And I haven't
So,
tried glass, but yeah.
but you've got other options, and the thing that we have learned about this and have sort of carried with us after like the 80s when it was kind of the big boom of alternative materials is that it's about treatment of those materials
Hmm.
and how you treat them differently than their original usage, perhaps. So if you've got something that was like an old tin box for cookies that you're, cutting up and recycling into a bracelet or earrings or a pendant, or, taking something that is, an old, a rock from the beach, cutting it in half and, carving into it, you're treating it like a precious material. You're taking it out of its mundane context and elevating it to a place that is considered and uh, handled differently, thought of differently as a precious object
Yeah.
rather than a
Like
rock.
your sirens, the ones that you did
Hmm.
maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they had bike reflectors,
Yeah, yeah.
it, and you totally transform that bike reflector into a piece of art that's wearable, you know. And I don't
Yeah.
know, Julia, I'm not as familiar if you've done any alternative materials, but you could totally
Not as
do
much.
your knitting
Yeah, I
or
mean,
weaving
yes,
to,
you can absolutely do a lot of the knitting process with less expensive wires. You can do it with coated wires, right? One of the knitting, the cord weaving, I think we called it, or cord knitting. You can do it with the artistic wires is what they're called. They're basically resin coated copper, and you can't heat those because if you heat them, it melts the resin coating off it. But those are the ones that are so famously used by Arlene Fish to do really amazing. Like she did that amazing uh huge window display of like sort of undersea creatures that she did for the Racine Museum. That was sort of the first time that she started making up bigger and lots of, big collections of them to make like a big statement.
Well, and that
And
brings up a good point because you can, with these less expensive materials, alternative materials, you can explore not only the material, but the scale,
mhm.
and go like a lot of the pieces that are in. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people in the 80s were doing such big,
Well,
colorful
it
got
was
to
pieces.
also
combat the or
it was
balance out
also
the
the
shoulder
time of the
pads.
big hair and the big shoulder pads, right?
Yeah,
Like, your jewelry had to compete with some other stuff.
yeah. And so you had these like these pieces because material value was not a consideration. So
Mhm.
you had people using
Well, it
things like,
was, but it was less, yeah,
but it wasn't like, at the time, it wasn't,
right.
$5,000 for an ounce of gold,
Exactly.
And so now you've got, people sort of going, what are we going to do? And it's like, there were, lots and lots of uses of everyday objects like knitting needles and using them because they were anodized aluminum and colorful, and then cutting them apart because they were this beautiful color and it was a
Right. You
different
cut a
material.
knitting needle up, you got a bunch of little tubes.
Yeah, great. So, ta-da. Yeah.
So
So, I mean, these are,
who is that book by? I'm trying
yes,
to research it and
It's
I
by
can't.
Peter Dormer and
Peter
Ralph
Dormer. Okay.
Turner.
right.
Peter Dormer and Ralph Turner, and it's called The New Jewelry Trends and Traditions.
Right.
And it was published in 1986
There we
or
go.
85.
Found it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, using stuff that is, I mean, I use one of the reasons that I started using knitting needles was because when I was in school back in the 80s, there were several artists that were using knitting needles as a material for their work. And I was like, and they were like, yeah, and you can use them for, tools in the studio because they make great jump rings, winders. And I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up with a bunch of these and they're, fun and colorful. But I've also got materials that are from, oh my gosh, here we go. Yeah, like anodized aluminum and all kinds of other materials that are being used. That's a trade pin from one of the snag conferences, and yeah, I put a lot of aluminum in here from that. But oh gosh,
So
I
yeah,
do
so
have.
basically the point of this tooltip is to say, don't panic,
Yep.
Right.
right? Change is great. Transition sucks. right? Like the process of sort of figuring out where we're going to go next, or like moving to a new city is wonderful, but the process of moving to the new city can sometimes be a little stressful. And so
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
sucks.
give yourself some self-care, recognize that change is stressful and that you're going to need to do some of that and kind of reevaluate where you're going. And then, pick a path to experiment with.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
this is like prime time to be super creative, think outside the box. You
Right,
know,
right,
just, 100% you're right, Julia. It's like this is actually can be a really exciting time, but also it can
mhm.
be stressful because you're like you gotta like step back
yeah,
and punt,
right,
it's you gotta rethink everything and unless you're gonna really commit to, staying the
And that is an
course.
option too. That is
Yeah.
an option too. Raise your prices, recognize that the raised price of silver is going to make that, people will see that even more valuable than it had been, and they will value your work as a consequence. Really, what that means when you're looking at $5,000 worth of gold for an
Yeah.
ounce, it means that you can raise the prices of the work that you're putting in. So your time ends up being less important in the grand scheme of the pricing that you're doing. And so then you can spend more time on a piece, you can invest more time and therefore charge more for the end piece because it's more intricate, because the time doesn't represent such a large percentage of the final cost. Whereas if the cost of the materials is really low, you're charging predominantly for your time, which is fine. Both of those are fine. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. It's just like in terms of opportunity, when the price of the base material is or the materials is really, really high, comparatively the cost of your time is lower, and
right,
therefore you can afford to pay yourself a fair price for your time, and you can afford to invest more time in it. So
right,
traditionally, price of gold is really high. What do you see? You see filigree and granulation and very thin things like the
Gumbo.
guabi beads,
Yeah.
kambu, because you're using very small amounts of material in a very labor intensive um, process. And then when the
right,
price of the metals is really low, you're going to see things like casting because you're using large amounts of material in a much less labor intensive process.
right.
So
So
it
things
could
like,
either be a switch in techniques or it could be a switch in it could either be a switch in materials, choosing a less expensive material, or choosing a more time investment technique that uses less of the material but takes a long time.
yeah. So, or, working with, like she said, less expensive material, and this is anodized aluminum, and you can get, some of these pieces that, I've had forever in the drawer since the last time, metal was crazy. But these are, yeah, just aluminum anodized mesh, which gives me all kinds of fun. These are from they're used a lot in the auto industry, but it is actually a textured metal. I believe it's probably steel, but these are coated with like engraved and then coated with like a resin.
That's
So
beautiful.
crazy stuff, right?
Is it steel? Is it
Um,
magnetic? Is it ferrous?
I don't know.
Well, and speaking of coatings, I mean, powder coating is
No,
a very
probably
viable,
aluminum.
you know,
Hmm.
thing that we actually will be teaching.
Hopefully, yeah. So
Already
the
in
thing about
development.
stuff like this is you can go to places like Reactive Metals out of Arizona. They've got a lot of niobium and titanium materials that you can, color in different all kinds of different ways. There are places like what is it? The not Lord of the Rings, but Ring Lord that you can
Yeah, the
get.
ring lord. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
you can get steel rings. They are very popular for like cosplay stuff for making chainmail.
The only
But
downside for the ring lord is for those of us who live in the continental US, they're fabulous and they're lovely, lovely people, and they're in Saskatoon, they're in Canada.
oh,
So shipping across the border right now with the tariff situation can be complicated.
Forgot
But if you
about
have a
that.
friend in Canada, if you have a friend in Canada, I mean, you can have things shipped. You just have
If
to
you live
be
in Canada.
prepared for the cost. And the nice thing about the ring lords stuff is that the rings, especially if you get like aluminum rings, they don't weigh anything. And
Yeah.
they'll just
Yeah.
put them in a little padded envelope. So
Yeah, and the thing about, aluminum, niobium, titanium, aluminum is kind of fun. This is actually from one of the trade pins from Snag as well, and
mhm.
it's roller mill printed. And so for stuff like that, you can roller mill print it, you can anodize it. There's all kinds of possibilities. So just sort of looking at materials in a new way that are around you, that are a color that you like.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, oh, I love this blue. Oh, it's part of a trash can or part of a yogurt top. It's explore it, play with it, see what it'll do. What's it take to cut it
Absolutely.
the way that you would with scissors, a saw, an X-Acto knife. And you may find that for some people, working with those materials can be uh, a choice. But I mean, this is a chance, instead of carving wax to cast something, a giant ring in silver, try carving bone or horn or plastic instead as a final piece, and seeing where that takes you.
Tanglewood
And
nut.
Tongwood, yeah, Tongwood
Vegetable
nuts.
ivory. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Good alternative.
And
Um, uh,
then move to, using fine silver bezels as the way we have been using gold bezels on silver or copper work as an accent. You start using silver as an accent,
yeah.
and
And it is still a less
highlighting.
expensive option as gold fill. It's still expensive, but it's more obtainable than,
Mhm.
pure gold. And plating's not that difficult either. So you've got, which we're also going to be teaching. So it's there. This is the time to explore those kinds of things, and what those materials mean. Can be symbolic, and incorporating them in your work can be something that changes the way that you work, because it's telling a story. I know, Helen uses a lot of glass in her work because of that very reason, in creating the layers that you do. So it's used
Mhm.
conceptually rather than for its transparency necessarily.
Right. Because I don't,
Right.
yeah, the glass that I generally do is actually not transparent, even though I'm using transparent glass to make what I make. The
Mhm.
particle size actually turns it into more of a translucent / opaque color.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
During the late 19th century too, we had in Europe, there were lots of battles and wars and things going on, and instead of doing high-end gold and silver kind of filigree, you end up with a lot of iron jewelry
Oh yeah,
and
Mhm.
yep. There's
and
actually some
horn.
beautiful Victorian iron
Yes.
filigree. Oh my God, it's
Mhm.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that came out of Germany was
yeah.
just incredible. And, so you've got this, amazing exploration of iron in jewelry. And you also then start having the rise of the middle class and this huge boom of decorative jewelry that isn't precious metal. And they knew how
Mhm.
to like plate it in silver or gold. So you could have things that were made out of, a lesser material like brass or, steel or iron or whatever, and then color it what you wanted to color it. And then you could use other materials like kingfisher feathers or something that was, like enameling that would give it color. So there's lots of options. And I just want to encourage everybody to sort of explore those things. Don't panic. And, if you've been, thinking about, how you can incorporate materials into your work, now's the time to give it a try.
Mhm.
So hang in there, everybody. It's going to
Woo!
be, yeah. I,
Exciting
I,
times.
yeah, I really kind of think it is, because I think a lot of people are going to really, um, have to shift,
Yeah.
and it's going to cause a huge shift in the the aesthetic and the wearability of different kinds of metals. So, I mean, we've already seen some of that in like titanium rings and yeah, all kinds of like alternative materials and like men's rings, especially. So, but yeah. All right, everybody, go out there and explore, be creative, and have fun. I hope you like us. Hit the like button, and check out all of our upcoming classes because we're probably going to have some classes that address all these things. So,
yep, we certainly will. We certainly will.
Have fun. Yeah, and let us know what you think. Anybody out there in the gallery that has some questions?
Nope, just Valerie saying hey.
Hey, Valerie. All right. So yeah, we've got all kinds of fun options coming up. So stay tuned, and we will see you next time for Tool Tip Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.